Hey guys, Susan here for Scraps for Sanity, and during this video we are going to do a tutorial on a 3-page wonder. Our 3-page wonder will consist of 2 designer pages and 1 solid page. Now I call it a 3-page wonder because you can make this entire booklet out of just 3 pages. We're going to add some ribbon, we're going to add a couple of flowers, but the basic point of it is being able to do an entire photo booklet with just 3 pages. Ready? Okay guys, ready to get started? First we're going to get our scoring device. You can use any kind you want. I like using this one. What we're going to do is we're going to take our first page, which is going to be our blank cardstock, and we're going to go ahead and start scoring it. Our first score line is going to be done at 2 3/8 all the way down to the bottom of the page. Our second score line is going to be at 7 1/4 inch all the way down the page. Okay, now we're going to pick up our cardstock and we're going to rotate it clockwise. Now we're going to go ahead and start scoring to make the folds of the page. So our first score line is going to be at 3 7/8 inch. And our second score is going to be at 4 1/8 inch, so we have this small little area that we're going to end up folding. Next we're going to score at 8 inches. And our last score is going to be at 8 1/4 inches. Now we're done with our scoring. Now I want you to note that up at the top we have 3 smaller rectangles, and then at the bottom of the page we have 3 larger rectangles. So this is going to be important a little bit later on. Now that we're done with scoring, we're going to take out our cutter. Okay ladies, now that we have our cutter out, I need to make a big note here. I normally use my cutter upside down. It helps me make my measurements more precise. Normally you'll have your cutter like this, which is perfectly fine. But for this project, ladies, go ahead and turn it around so that the measurements I tell you will actually be the same measurements you're cutting. We're going to start cutting with the 3 rectangles at the bottom of our cutter. Now we're going to make our first cut, and our first cut is going to be at 8 1/4 inches. So go ahead and line the edge of your paper up to 8 1/4 inches. This will go ahead and put us right over our first score line. Now we're going to cut from here to here. We're not going to cut all the way through it. That mark is 7 1/4 inches, and then we're going to go ahead and lift our blade up, and then we're going to move it down to 2 5/16 inch and cut to the bottom. We don't want to cut any of this part in the center. Note that that mark is actually at the first score line. And that second mark is actually at the second score line, the bottom one. Now we are going to move our paper over to line up with the 8-inch mark. Again, we're going to cut down to the 7 1/4 inch mark, the first score line. Going to pick that blade up again and go down to the 2 5/16 mark again, that bottom score line, and cut all the way to the bottom. Okay, now move your paper over to line the edge up at 4 1/8 inch. We're going to go ahead and cut down to that 7 1/4 inch mark again, lift up our blade, Go all the way back down to that 2 5/16 inch and cut all the way down to the bottom. Okay, we're going to pick up our paper again and move it to line up the edge at 3 7/8 inch. We're going to go all the way back up to the top, and we're going to cut down to that first score line again at 7 1/4 inch. Lift that blade back up, don't cut the middle part, and start cutting back again at 2 5/16 all the way down to the end. Now that we're done cutting that, we're going to go ahead and take our cutting board out and put our cutting mat in so we can cut just these little strips off right here. Okay, now that we have gone and cut out all of our little strips here, all 4 of them, we are going to go ahead and get out our cutter so that we can cut some other pieces. What you're going to do is you're going to line up your score mark at 3 7/16. Okay, after lining up our score line to 3 7/16, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this top rectangle and this bottom rectangle. We're not going to cut the middle one. So we're going to go ahead and bring our blade down, stop before we hit the middle one, pick up the blade, and then move it down to the bottom rectangle and cut the bottom rectangle. So we have this long piece in the middle and 2 shorties on the ends. Now that we've cut our pieces off, now it's time to fold. We're going to fold at all of our score marks. So we've got 1, 2, 3, another 4. Now we got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we've gone ahead and folded all of our score lines. So once you fold them all up, you now have the beginnings of your little book. So we've got this little book here. Let me go ahead and show you the original one. Now we've got to start thinking about the inside paper. So this is what the inside paper looks like. Okay, now we're going to set our little booklet or box or whatever you want to call it right now off to the side. Now we're going to start cutting out our designer paper, and this is going to be the inside page. We're going to first start out with cutting off the tab part here. Start cutting our strips. We're going to start on the right hand side of the paper, so we're going to start with this side, and our first cut is going to be at 3 5/8. Next cut again is going to be at 3 5/8 inch. And our last cut is going to be again at 3 5/8 inch. And this little edge piece, you don't need it, so you can go ahead and put it off to the side. We're not going to use it. Now that we've cut those 3, we can start cutting the pieces of our booklet. So we're going to do the top, middle, and the bottom. First off, we're going to go ahead and remove the top 1/4 inch. We don't need that. Now our next cut is going to be at 2 1/8 inch. Next cut is going to be at 4 5/8 inch. Next cut is going to be at 3 1/8 inch. And on to our next page here. This is going to be the middle portion of the book. Now on the top of this one, we want to remove the top 7/16 inch. Our next cut is going to be at 2 1/8 inch, just 2 1/8 inch. And our next cut is going to be at 4 5/8. And our last cut is going to be at 4 3/8 inch. For our third strip, we're going to go ahead and cut it, but we're not going to cut anything off the top, all right? We're going to actually make our first real cut for the book at 2 1/8 inch. Our next cut is going to be at 4 5/8 inch. Okay, now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you remove 1 1/2 inches from the paper because it's just blank space and we want the book to have the little birdie in it, okay? So we're going to just remove this 1 1/2 inches here. Set that little piece off to the side and we're going to make our last cut at 3 1/8 inch. With that cut, now we have the 3 pages that we're going to have in our book. So we've got this strip here, birdie on the bottom, birdie in the middle, and the other half this birdie up here. This one in the bottom, this one in the middle, and this one up here. And our little birdie, remember we cut off that 1 1/2 inch so that we can make sure we had that little birdie on the bottom. And there we go. Now time for something completely different. We're going to go ahead and round the corners of our paper. Now we're going to grab this brown paper, the cardstock that's going to be our base of the book, and we're going to take our large corner punch and we're going to punch all of the corners out. Now that we've cut all of the corners of our brown cardstock, we're going to start cutting the designer paper that we have for the middle part. Now, I kind of got a little ahead of myself, or there was some camera issues, I can't remember what, but we already cut all of the edges for these. Now, this is kind of important because we don't actually cut all of the edges. We're just going to cut certain edges. You see how that is? The center piece for each strip is not going to get any corners cut off at all. Okay, so take note on this, the top pieces, all 3 of the top pieces have their top corners cut but not their bottom ones. The center pieces have no corners cut and the bottom pieces have the bottom corners cut. Some of you probably have noticed while I was laying out my pieces that I've already chalked some of the edges. So what I did is I used this distressing ink in walnut brown. Some of you probably have the cat's eye, and you can go ahead and use chestnut roan to go ahead and do that. Either way, whatever color you want to is perfectly fine. So after chalking everything, we're going to go ahead and start gluing our pieces down. But before gluing them, match them up to their spot. You don't want to accidentally put one down in the wrong spot and then have to peel it up. Just pain in the butt. So go ahead and match them up and then start gluing them. I like to use zip dry or scrappy glue. You can use whatever you want. I just like using glue because it gives me a little bit more time to make any adjustments that I might need to make. Now on to the back part. Now on to our other side of the booklet. This is going to be our other designer paper, and that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to go ahead and grab out our cutter again, and we're going to start cutting off pieces. So what I want you to do is go ahead and cut that first top strip off like we did the other time. got that piece off, again, we're going to start cutting from the right-hand side of our paper just like we did the other one. First thing we're going to cut off is this little strip right here. We don't really want to use that strip, so we're going to cut the first 1/2 inch off. Our next cut is going to be at 3 5/8. Our next cut is going to be at 3 5/8. And our final cut is going to be at 3 5/8. We're going to be cutting from the bottom and the top, so just pay attention to the cuts that we're making. For this piece right here, we're going to cut the bottom 1/4 inch off. Now move it over to your 3 1/4 inch mark and cut at the 3 1/4 inch. Then our next cut is going to be at 4 5/8. For the final cut, we're going to cut at 2 1/8 inch. That last little bottom part that we just cut off, we don't need, so you can put it off to the side. Our center piece with the little birdie at the top, we're going to start cutting from the bottom at 4 1/2 inches from the bottom. Next cut is 4 5/8 inch. And your final cut for this piece is going to be cutting at 2 1/8 inch. That last little piece we cut off, you don't need it. Now our last piece, you're going to cut 1 1/4 inches off the top. So before we were cutting from the bottom, now you're going to cut 1 1/4 inches off the top. Our next cut is going to be at 2 1/4 inch. Next cut is going to be at 4 5/8 inch. And our final cut is going to be at 3 1/4 inches. And we're not going to need that little piece at the very edge that we cut off, so you can put that off to the side. Now it's time to clip our corners, but this isn't going to be really that easy. Some of the pieces are mixed around, so really pay attention to this part. So we're going to take our initial piece that we've already glued the other designer paper down, make sure it's right side up. I'm going to turn it around, and then we're going to start with the first stack that we cut out. So this first piece with the little butterfly on the right hand corner, this is going to go into the bottom right corner upside down. Now our middle one with the little butterflies on the left hand side, that's going to go into the middle portion on the far left of the booklet. It's going to go right side up. And our little piece here that has the itty bitty butterfly wing on the bottom left, that's going to go into our top right portion, but it's going to stay upright. Now our second batch with the little birdie on it, this piece is going to go in the center column upside down. Our next little piece, the center piece with the little butterflies, this is going to go in the dead center right side up. Our last piece for the center is going to be this big one. It's going to go in the center bottom column, and it's going to go upside down. Our last little column here, we're going to take this first one, we're going to turn it upside down, going to put it on the bottom left. Middle part we're going to leave upright, and we're going to put on the far right center. And our last little piece here, this one's going to go on the top left upside down. So to recap, this top one's upside down, upside down. This next one is right side up. Right side up, right side up, right side up. This one's upside down, and upside down. So now our pieces are actually placed in the proper places and we can round our corners. Now you remember on the other side, our top pieces have the top sides rounded. Our bottom pieces have the bottom sides rounded and the center pieces have no rounding at all. Now we're going to put the ribbon on because we need to place it underneath these designer pieces. We're going to take this portion off and this portion off, and we're going to tape these pieces down. I like using tape just because it's very secure. Tape won't be seen anyways underneath the designer paper, so go ahead and tape it down. We're going to put it directly in the center here, and we're going to tape this puppy down. Now this piece, we're going to go ahead and line it up so they're directly across from each other, and we're going to tape it right here to the center as well. After doing that, time to chalk. After chalking, now we're going to glue our pieces together again. Now we're going to flip our book over and we're going to do some folding to kind of show you why we put some upside down and some of them right side up. So these are all the ones that were upside down. Now we're going to flip these top ones down so that they are all right side up as well. So you've got some congruency to the paper. Now as we fold it up, you can kind of see why we put the ribbon where we did, because we needed one on the outside and one on the outside so that we could essentially tie them together. Now that we have our little book, we're going to go ahead and put on our little gold doily and our flowers. You have a little piece of gold doily, and we're going to go ahead and take that and just cut out the center part. Now it doesn't have to be a pretty cut, just want to get rid of that extra. Alright, now we're going to get our glue so we can glue this onto our piece. Just put a little on, you don't want it to go all crazy through the holes. And we're going to go ahead and stick it down here on the left bottom side of our booklet. Now you have two little funky things like this. You're going to go ahead and just arrange them however you want around the doily area. Go ahead and glue them down. Now we're going to go ahead and start gluing down our flowers. You can arrange them however you want, or you can follow me exactly. Now, once all of our flowers are on our booklet, we can tie it up and we now have a completed 3-page wonder. Thank you so much for joining me and doing my little test run. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself as much as I enjoyed teaching you. Go ahead and leave any comments you can on the bottom and let me know what you think.